What are my current thoughts on Mike Mentzer in 2024? Hey, everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. I thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today. And, I'm going to kind of update my stance on this. And it is a popular question because apparently Mentzer and HIIT are back in vogue in a lot of circles. There's regained some popularity. There's been a resurgence in a lot of that. This tends to go in circles, by the way. And therefore, I've had people start asking me, hey, what are your thoughts on Mentzer these days and his stuff the longer you've been coaching? And here's the thing. I feel like a resurgence in looking at what Mentzer had to say is largely a response to the extreme end of the evidence-based fitness and bodybuilding world, to where you have a single circle of coaches and researchers who have been pushing out ridiculous volume suggestions that are probably not effective for most people, and to be quite frank, are not even effective for the people who are promoting them. In other words, some of these people in clothes don't even look like they lift, okay? Even though they've been doing this for many, many, many years and are researchers in these fields, who push these crazy high volumes. And yet we also see plenty of people who are natural or very mildly enhanced who are crazy jacked on low volumes and hard training. And we've always seen that. Now, I digress, and let me point out that there are people who do extremely high volumes of training who are still jacked. Okay? They do exist, and it's not an ineffective method. But here's the thing. What a lot of people have realized that the time commitment of that sort of stuff starts to look kind of ridiculous. And I think that's something that we do have to address in these conversations, because when both of these methods seem to be quite effective, the much lower volume, high intensity training versus the higher volume, yes, there's going to be some personal preference. There's going to be some of that. But people are also going to look at time commitment. Like, can I just work harder and spend less time doing it so I can get on with my life and do other stuff, because I'm trying to get the gains, but I have a busy life. And I think that's kind of a big deal here, isn't it? Because not everyone wants to train for hours and hours and hours. Now, some people benefit from it. There can be a conditioning into it. And for some athletes, I think it's great for that. That's for definitely the conditioning side. But in terms of just gaining muscle, yeah. So let's talk briefly about my thoughts on Mentzer. I don't think Mentzer got everything right. The evidence for that is clear. So we need to be clear. Mentzer was kind of a pioneer in his era. Okay, he introduced a lot of ideas and concepts that caused an entire shift in whole paradigms in parts of the bodybuilding community. Produced some successful Mr. Olympias like Dorian Yates. Okay. Produced a lot of people, I noticed when I was younger, who were crazy jacked, who fell into those styles of training, who didn't even compete and still had phenomenal physiques. And I knew people like that. Okay. The basic methodology obviously works of going with very high intensity and lower volumes. It absolutely works. It's been displayed in the real world over and over. And there were studies showing it until this other group of people, and the studies have always been kind of split on that. So the thing I would point out there, though, is that modern exercise science in terms of hypertrophy is still just not that good. It just isn't. Okay? It just isn't. And there's a lot of problems with the methodology, with the sample sizes, with the bias. So we can't always take it at face value, and we do have to look at the anecdote also and see what has worked for people. It is important. So with Mentzer, things I think he got right. Most people were doing simply way too much training, way more than was necessary in his era. But I want people to keep in mind the way Mentzer trained for his Mr. Olympia almost wins is not what he advocated later in life, of the crazy low volumes and very drawn out frequencies. So we do need to be clear on that. But was his original preface correct? That it's simply too much training for most people, and that they could gain just as much muscle, sometimes with a third or a fourth of the sort of training volumes that were being advocated. Yeah, absolutely. train harder. Do I think he was right that getting really close to muscle failure or to muscle failure can have very pronounced effects on hypertrophy, particularly if you don't want to spend hours and hours in the gym lifting? I think so. Do I think his focus on general good form, full range of motion were good ideas? Yes. Keeping in mind, a lot of the champions at the time, even Arnold, were known for their really loose, sloppy form. Right? Arnold Schwarzenegger did not train with good form or strict. Mike did. Okay. So for the average person, could there be a lot of merit to that? Yes, because again, even if hypertrophy is equal, he felt that it would be superior. I think it can be equal because you can still reach muscle failure doing that. You still get hard sets in. In some cases, it may reduce the load on the target muscles, though. But we also come over to overuse injuries and stuff. You're more likely to get hurt using a looser form, particularly with higher volumes, and we need to be aware of that. Okay, I think he got a lot of stuff right. He didn't have access to a lot of equipment to measure things and big sample sizes to ever truly be scientific, though. He came up with a lot of theories, and some of them are pretty good. They're logical. They're reasonable. Where I think he went wrong was the idea of just less and less and less and less training down to the point where, people were barely training. But that was near the end of his life. He had his own set of issues going on there. There were obviously discussions of addictions and other things. But the general idea, it spawned multiple training systems. It spawned Dorian Yates. It spawned DC training. It even spawned, like lean gains. These were all very successful systems. Didn't we all see over the decades people get phenomenal results on these systems? I certainly saw it. But I don't think we have to buy into those exact systems. Just the idea. But the idea there was, let's train really, really hard. Focus on progressive overload. Focus on progressive overload tension. Do only the number of sets you need to really maximize growth and push those sets to the bleeding edge, and then get out of the gym and go recover. Okay. It's a pretty effective method, and it produces some thick, dense, hard physiques. And that's one of the things that's been noticed when you focus even on that style of training is that potential for density. Some stuff possibly with myofibrillar growth and all of that. Been a lot of topic with those things over the years. Seen everyone from Benno to Lyle McDonald discuss that. But yeah, so in reality, Mentzer in his way was brilliant. He was ahead of his time. But due to limitations, the ability to measure stuff correctly and fully apply the scientific method, I don't think he got everything right. But I think he introduced some interesting concepts that changed lifting, and you've got to give the man credit for that. Right? You got to give him credit for that because he did change a lot of stuff fundamentally. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys and gals next time.